Good day, class. We will discuss the importance of death determination. Number 1. The civil personality of a natural person is extinguished because of death. The civil personality, because of death, it is extinguished. So, the effect of death, all the rights and obligation of deceased is determined by law and by contract and by will be extinguished under Article 42 Civil Code. So, second is the property of a person. So, how will you transmit uh, his shares if he is dead? So, under this, succession is a mode of acquisition by virtue of which the property, rights, and obligation to the extent of the value of the inheritance of a person are transmitted through his death to another or others either by will or by operation of law. So the property of a person can be transmitted even the person is dead by a will or by the operation of law under Article 774 of the Civil Code. Number 3. The death of a partner is one of the causes of dissolution of partnership agreement. So it is clearly that if the partner is dead, so your partnership agreement will be dissolution or erased under Article 1830 of the Civil Code. Number 4. The death of either the principal or the agent is mode of extinguishment of agency. Agency is extinguished in page by death in number 3 of the civil interdiction, insanity, or insolvency of the principal or the agent under Article 1919 of the Civil Code. So, number 5, the criminal liability of a person is extinguished by death. So, how criminal liability is totally extinguished? So, criminal liability is totally extinguished by the death of a convict. Number 1, as to the personal penalties and as to pecuniary penalties, liability therefore is extinguished only when the death of the offender occurs before judgment. So, if the death occurs before judgment, all his personal penalties and pecuniary penalties liabilities will be therefore extinguished. But Article 89 of the Revised Penal Code states that the civil case for claims which does not survive is dismissed upon death of the defendant. Means when the action is recovery of money, debt of or interest thereon, and the defendant dies before the final judgment in the court of the first instance, it shall dismiss to be prosecuted in the manner especially provided by these rules. Rule 3, Section 21 of the court. Remember that, class? Okay. The criminal liability of a person is extinguished by death. Notice to creditor to be issued by the court immediately after granting letters, testamentary or of administration. The court shall issue a notice requiring all persons having money claims against the descendant to file them in the office of the clerk of said court under Rule 86, Section 1 of Rules of Court. So, let's discuss about death. Death is the termination of life. It is the complete cessation of all vital functions without possibility of resuscitation. So, there is no possibility of recovery. It is an irreversible loss of properties of a living matter. Dying is a continuing process while death is an event that takes place at a precise time. The ascertainment of death is a clinical and not a legal problem. So, uncertainty of death, of the moment of death, previously complete and persistent cessation of heart action and respiration, cardiorespiratory, is the standard criteria in the determination of death. So remember that cardiorespiratory is the standard criteria in the determination of death. But the following events in the recent years lead to the development of uncertainty of the moment of death. So there are what you call this opinions that the criteria in the determination of deaths may be as follows. So number one, the uncertainty of the moment of death may be the increasing use of mechanical resuscitative devices which can maintain respiration and cardiac function almost indefinitely. Heart vitality may be maintained by coronary perfusion or its rhythm by defibrillation or pacemaker. Breathing can be sustained by a respiratory or pulmonator. Number two is there is an increasing demand of organs for transplantation. Vital organs can now be transplanted, and the shorter the time space between death of the donor and the transplantation process, the more is the chance of success of surgery. So take note that if the vital organs can be transplanted in a shorter time space after death, so there will be a chance of success of surgery. It becomes a problem as to when the donor dies for the immediate removal of the organ to be transplanted. So the surgeon must see to it that the donor is dead before the organ to be transplanted is removed. Otherwise, he may be held liable if done prematurely. Number 3, coma, following administration of excessive doses of modern sedatives. Remember, modern sedatives and hypnotics could be mistaken for death. Coma induced by barbiturates, or which we call in clinical is a barb, could be mistaken for death because it clinically appears to have eliminated breathing and heart action, chill the body, and makes reflexes weak or totally non-existent. So, barbiturates, it is defined as a central nervous depressants. They reduce the activity of nerves, causing muscles relaxation. They can reduce heart rate, breathing, and blood pressure, or barbiturates affect gamma aminobutyric acid, or we call it GABA, a neurotransmitter chemical that the nerves use to communicate with one another. So brain death, based on the criterion used in its determination by death. Once again, it is also a determination of death. So death occurs when there is deep irreversible coma. Deep irreversible coma, brain death. Absence of electrical brain activity, it is called brain death. And complete cessation of all the vital function without possibility of resuscitation may be either death or brain death. Remember that, class. Cardiorespiratory death. Second, death occurs when there is a continuous and persistent cessation of heart action and respiration. Cardiorespiratory death is a condition in which the physician and the members of the family pronounce a person to be dead based on the common sense or intuition. Number 3, some of the countries or states provide both brain and cardiorespiratory bases in alternative or electric way in the determination of the moment of death. In 1970, the state of Kansas became the first to enact a statute which specifies more clearly that accepted alternatives for defining death. So, under this Section 1, Chapter 378 of the Kansas State provides the following. A person will be considered medically and legally dead if, in the opinion of a physician, or based on an ordinary standards of medical practice, there is the absence of spontaneous respiratory and cardiac functions, and because of the disease or condition which caused directly or indirectly these functions to cease, or because of the passage of time since this function cease, attempts at resuscitation or attempts to revive the dead person are considered hopeless, and this event, death, will have occurred at the time this function is ceased. Second, if a person will be considered medically or legally dead if, in the opinion of a physician, is based on ordinary standard and medical practice, there is an absence of spontaneous brain function. There is an absence, remember, second is the absence of a spontaneous brain function. And if, based on the ordinary standards of medical practice, during reasonable attempt to either maintain or restore spontaneous circulatory or respiratory function, in the absence of aforesaid brain function, it appears that further attempts at resuscitation or supportive maintenance will not succeed. So, they still attempt to revive the person that will have occurred at the time when this condition first coincide. That is to be pronounced before artificial means of supporting respiratory and circulatory functions are terminated and before vital organ is removed for purposes of transplantation. Brain death is as much as there are no universally accepted criteria yet to establish a condition of brain death. The following proposal of recommendation are made by different committees or bodies. Number 1 is according to the Harvard Report of 1968, the following are the characteristics of irreversible coma. So, irreversible coma, what are the characteristics? First is the unreceptivity and unresponsibility. There is a total unawareness to externally applied stimuli, and inner need and complete unresponsiveness are definition of irreversible coma. Even the most intense, painful stimuli evoke no vocal or other response, not even a groan, withdrawal of his limb, or quickening of respiration. Number B, no movement or breathing. Observation considering a period of at least 1 hour by physicians is adequate to satisfy the criteria of no spontaneous muscular movements or a spontaneous respiration, or response to stimuli such as pain, touch, sound, or light. After the patient is on the mechanical respirator, the total absence of spontaneous breathing may be established by turning off the respirator for 3 minutes and observing whether there is any effort on the part of the subject to breathe spontaneously. The respirator may be turned off for this time provided that at the start of the trial period the patient carbon dioxide tension is within the normal range, and provided also that the patient had been breathing room air for at least 10 minutes prior to the trial. So there are many trials made in this event. So one is the response to stimuli such as pain, touch, or sound, or light. So, and the second is breathing. So you put on a respirator. If there is, after the respirator is taken off, you will see 3 minutes and observing whether there is any effort to the part of the subject to breathe spontaneously. So, provided also that the patient has been breathing room air at least 10 minutes prior to the trial. So, no reflexes. So, irreversible coma with abolition of central nervous system activity is evidenced in part by the absence of elicitable reflexes. The pupil will be fixed and dilated and will not respond to the direct source of bright light. So one example is putting a light in your eye, near your eye, so there will be a movement or interaction of your muscles in the eye. Ocular movement to the head, turning, and irrigation of the ears with ice water and blinking are absent. There is no evidence of postural activity, decerebrate or other. Swallowing, yawning, vocalization are in the abeyance. Corneal and pharyngeal reflexes cannot be absent. As a rule, the stretch or tendon reflexes cannot be elicited. Example, tapping the tendons of the biceps, triceps, and pronator muscles, quadriceps, and gastrocnemius muscles with the reflex hammer elicits no construction of the respective muscle. Plantar or noxious stimulation gives no response. So, all of these are present, it will be the equivalent to irreversible coma. D. Flat electroencephalogram. So, of great confirmatory value is the flat isoelectric EEG. We must assume that the electrodes have been properly applied, that the apparatus is functioning normally, and that the personnel in charge are competent. Which means competent, there are what you call is authorized person to use the apparatus. So all of these tests shall be repeated at least 24 hours. So repeated at least 24 hours. Later, with no change, it is emphasized that the patient be declared dead. So if after 24 hours there is no change, so they will declare the person to be dead before any effort is made to take him off the respirator if he is then on a respirator. So brain death. So second is in 1969, the Ad hoc Committee of Human Transplantation convened under the auspices of the Institute of Forensic Sciences. Dawkins University School of Law adopted the proposed criteria for the determination of death, otherwise known as Philadelphia Protocol, and the following were considered as lack of responsiveness to internal and external environment. Second, absence of spontaneous breathing movement for 3 minutes in the absence of hypocarbia and while breathing room air. No muscular movements with generalized flaccidity and no evidence of postural activity or shivering. Reflexes and responses. Number 1 is that pupil fixed and dilated, non-reactive to strong stimuli. The second is corneal reflexes absent, supraorbital or other pressure response absent, both pain response and decelerate posturing. Absence of snouting or sucking response, no reflex response to upper air stimulation, no reflex response to lower air stimulation, no ocular response to ice water stimulation of the inner ear, no deep tendon reflexes, no superficial reflexes, no plantar response as well. So number E is falling artificial pressure without support by drugs or other means. So isoelectric electroencephalogram in the absence of hypothermia, anesthetic agents, and drugs intoxication recorded spontaneously and during auditory and tactile stimulation. It is further laid down that these criteria shall have been present for at least 2 hours and the death should be certified by 2 physicians other than the physician of a potential organ recipient. Under Grahol, Legal Medicine, Francis Camps, Ann Robinson, and Bernard Lucas, edition 3rd, page 51 and 52. These are the sources. So other set of criteria to establish brain death. So there are other sets. So number 1 is Mohandas and Chow. In 1971, made a summary of the criteria of brain death, which was accepted by the University of Minnesota Science Center. Second is the Ottawa General Hospital in 1970 set up guidelines for the criteria of cerebral death. So number 3 is in France in 1968 the Council of Ministers published a decree which adopted the official definition of death on recommendation of the French Academy of Medicine. So although the consideration of brain death is the most ideal criteria, the difficult and practicability of its application is a problem. Electroencephalogram, which is the most reliable instrument to determine death, brain activities, is not available in many places. So, remember, always take note that the most reliable instrument to determine brain activities is the electroencephalogram. So, even if available, the number of competent person to apply the instrument and the interpretation of the result is quite limited. So the use of the criteria of brain death may only be applied to those persons who are potential organ donors. So thank you for watching.